In studio with us today, speaking of all that, is Representative Cynthia Davis from the O'Fallon area, and I'll ask her in a minute what other areas her district incorporates. But I know that she specifically is from O'Fallon. She is running for the state senate. And this is an interesting race. This is not like every race you have out there. We're going to let her tell us just a little bit more about that. And she's in studio with us today. Welcome to the new Truth Talk 630, Representative
It's
Davis.
Great to be here.
Happy to have you. And so tell us a little bit about the dynamic of your race.
Well, some of the listeners out there, in fact, may have understood that we've got problems with Washington, D.C. And the problems going on in Washington are the same problems we're having right here in Jefferson City, just on a smaller scale. All the same feeling of why aren't they listening to us? There's only one big difference, and that is in the Washington, D.C. Congress, they are run by Democrats. So you don't expect Republicans to be able to get much done. However, in Missouri, the Senate is run supposedly by Republicans, yet they're still behaving like Democrats. So what gives?
And so when you say behaving like Democrats, can you explain to us specifically what you mean by that?
Well, the reason I'm running is because my opponent is bloating the budget and pushing bigger government. And if you just break it down to that simple, it's not that hard to figure out when we hear bills what is happening. So since I've been in the House of Representatives for 8 years, I've had a front row seat to some of the shenanigans going on over there. And we're at a point where their loyalty to each other is greater than their loyalty to their own citizens. And that is what's turned it into a big frat club.
And so how is your race looking? What's it looking like to you?
Oh, great. People are hungry for a real candidate. I mean, we want a pitcher, not a belly itcher. We've got some real problems over there. People realize what's wrong when for 3 years in a row the House sends them good pro-life legislation and they trash it. Or ruin it and mutilate it. And they're too wimpy to handle coercion, and they don't apologize to their constituents when 62% of all women who get abortions say they later regretted it, but they didn't know they had choices, and a good percentage of them are being coerced. So what are we doing to our own selves when we've got a Senate that won't take up the easiest issue on the abortion issue to sell?
And so tell me about what you would do that is different from what your opponent has been doing while he's been in the Senate.
Well, the first problem is let's talk about the healthcare freedom for a minute. That's a perfect example where I filed a bill. I was the first and only one in December to file a bill. It got passed through the House, and the Senate trashed it. Again and again. So they were shamed for doing this watered down nothing inaction. The citizens were furious, and they finally threw some makeshift bill together that was not what it was supposed to be. And they think we're going to take this and be so easily duped. They don't know what the difference is. First of all, we don't have to ask the public if we should change state law. We change state law all the time. So it should have been a constitutional amendment, and this is a perfect example of their ineptness.
Very interesting analysis. I really hadn't heard that perspective. There's a whole bunch of, you are one of those people, when I meet you, you just don't strike me as rank and file candidate, Exhibit A. You don't look like the mugshot of the candidate. You don't sound like someone who has rehearsed answers the way that candidates are told they need to rehearse answers. And I know a little bit about that from being kind of on the inside of politics. You're sort of outside the box, aren't you? What makes you want to grab on to that being, because anyone can be polished to be a typical candidate, but you've chosen not to do that. What makes you grasp on to being an atypical candidate? What makes you that person?
If we're going to take back America, we need honest, real people. And we need people who are willing to say the emperor's naked if he's naked. We've got to have people who are willing to stand up and call right, right, and wrong, wrong, and know the difference instead. Now, the lobbyists do run things. That's my point, just like in Washington, D.C. So my opponent can get a check for $10,000 just by picking up the phone. I'm getting a lot of $20 checks, and it takes a lot of those to make up for a $10,000 check. But people are hungry for authenticity. So maybe this contest will be a big experiment over whether the people really run the Senate or whether the big money runs the Senate.
Now, I'm curious because of the timing. You decided to run at a time when the Tea Party was really at, a height. I mean, the people out there were showing their discontent every day. We had a rally at Keener Plaza with 10,000 people at the Tea Party, rallies all over your area as well. I'm curious, without the Tea Party, would you have made the decision to run?
Oh, totally, because we've got problems. I don't care if there's a Tea Party or not. We've got serious problems. People are not getting allowed to have their voice be heard. And then we've got bad decisions being made. Why are we having to babysit the elected officials all the time? I get a little tired of being told, call Washington, D.C., call Jefferson City, tell your senators to do the right thing. I don't have to babysit Todd Aiken. He always does the right thing. Why can't we just relax and sleep at night, knowing that the world is under control because the people there are competent and can do the right thing without me having to tell them all the time?
Do you consider yourself a Tea Party candidate?
Oh, well, I've been to more Tea Parties than most people. It's cleansing. You need to go there. You need to hold up a sign and feel what it does to your soul to let your voice be heard, because we're all fed up. And I'm the first, I'll tell you, there are problems in both parties. And my opponent is a perfect example of what's wrong with the Republicans. And it's time for us to do what we can to take back the country. We're not going to get it back by sitting at the home in our remote control.
And I want to talk to you a little bit more. Can you stay with us? Because I really want to ask you a little bit about your faith, because we're a Christian station, and I'd like to talk to you about that. Would you be willing to stay with us?
Love to. My favorite subject.
Then you'll want to stay with us, too, here on the Dr. Gina Show on the all-new Truth Talk, 630 New KJSL.